That hasn't happened, at least since Tony Blair became leader of the party in the 1990s. Miliband promised to scrap the bedroom tax and freeze energy prices until 2017. The energy companies didn't like it, the Daily Mail didn't like it, Peter Mandelson didn't like it, but according to the opinion polls, voters did. Britain's Muslim communities number amongst the poorest sections of society, so can Labour deliver for them? With me in the studio to discuss the issues are former Labour Cabinet Minister Dawn Butler and Eleanor McGrath from the Taxpayers Alliance. On the phone, we're joined by Labour MP Andrew Slaughter and by Fouad Hamza from the Conservative Muslim Forum. Welcome to the programme, everybody. So Eleanor, this has been very popular. Do you see any problems with it?
Well, I think his policy about energy policy, it will be a popular one with the voters. As we all know, our household bills are going through the roof at the moment with gas and electricity. However, there are a number of questions and concerns we would have about it. Generally, in the long term, what is this going to mean for future energy policy? You know, we are going back to renationalising it essentially by fixing the prices that they want to fix till 2017. So the questions are, in the future, is what's going to happen at 2017? Are prices going to go through the roof, or is this going to be a permanent part of government policy? And it is something that does need to be looked at. However, the government also are not going in the right way either with energy policy. Their energy bill is one of the most, it's pushing regulations. It's giving certain companies the power to do whatnot. So it's something that really needs to be looked at, and basically they need to just cut down all green taxes, get rid of regulation, and just make it easier for the taxpayer to really get what they can from their energy and not get as many household bills that are going through the roof like I'm getting. So it is something that needs to be looked at.
Dawn, so was the speech a surprise, a welcome surprise?
I like your intro. I think it's true. Ed has talked about policies that we recognise and understand and feel that it's the right thing to do. So in terms of the energy policy, the fact is this: the energy companies are already trying to get people to sign up to fix their energy prices for the next 3 years or the next 4 years. So that's already in existence. The whole point of this policy is that it's fixed for 2 years, and during those 2 years, Ofgem's looked into, and the actual way that energy is geared, the way it's then sold to themselves as energy companies and then sold onto the consumer, all of that's looked at, and then it's made fairer. So that's the whole point. It's kind of given 2 years for the energy policy to be fairer, so people will have cheaper energy overall, and to widen the market so that more energy companies can get involved. I would actually prefer for it to be renationalised, and I think it's almost already happening. So you've got lots of different councils, for instance, they're getting together and they're saying, right, let's buy our energy in bulk and then sell it to the constituents. So that's effectively already happening in terms of it's almost a community nationalisation of the industry. So that's already moving in that direction. I think it's a good thing. Overall, people will have cheaper bills. And the energy company saying there's going to be a blackout, I think is completely irresponsible.
I think, though, the problem is, I think yes, there is an issue with energy bills. They're gone through the roof and whatnot, but he's kind of going about it the wrong way. He needs to look at the fact that there needs to be a change in green taxes, energy regulation. It needs to, stop picking one fuel over the other.
Somewhere. I mean, in those 2 years,
he was the minister responsible for this. He had the time. He could have done something then when he was the minister. Look how much our bills have gone through the roof since that time. He didn't do anything then, and now he's just trying to renationalise the whole system.
Okay, well, let me just bring Fouad Hamza in. I mean, the Tories have been trailing by 8% in the opinion polls all the way through the summer, and now they're trailing by 10%. So the policy seems to be working for some people, Hamza. Fouad, can you hear me?
I think if you actually look at the facts and drill down to the facts here, the fact is, which country has the cheapest gas prices in Europe? That country is the UK currently. Which country has the cheapest electricity, or the third cheapest price in Europe? That currently is the UK. I think it's very disingenuous of Labour and Ed Miliband to peddle this, which is it's going to be a populist policy, in the fact that people think that the price is driven by the energy companies. It in fact isn't driven by energy, it's driven by the market prices. Currently, the energy companies only make about 5% profit. 5%. That equates to about £1 per week per household, £52 a year. If you were to completely nationalise the energy system and provide it at cost, the most you could save a household is £52 a year.
We are already getting nationalised energy, though, aren't we?
Well, we know.
Well, we are.
But they're making 5%.
No, I mean EDF is a nationalised company. It's just a French nationalised company, not a British nationalised company.
Yeah, but it's irrelevant. The point is that the profits that are making are minuscule. It's 5%. It equates to £52. So if you were to completely nationalise everything, the most you could ever save any family in a year is £52. I think it's quite disingenuous of Labour.
Compares fairly favourably with getting married under the Tories' proposals, though, doesn't it? Anyway, let me bring in Andrew Slaughter. Andrew, are your eyes welling with tears for the plight of the energy companies?
Well, I think you just heard there the authentic voice of the Tory party defending once again the energy companies. Ed just didn't talk about the energy companies and big cartels profiting last week. He also talked about developers who are land banking and are not building houses that are affordable for people to live in. He also talked about supporting small businesses rather than major multinational companies. I think, and I've got a big Muslim constituency in Hammersmith, about 15% of the vote, that we should be standing up for communities and for families and not standing up for developers and energy companies and big corporations. And I was so impressed last week by hearing that authentic voice of Labour speaking to people, only then, not just Muslim families, obviously, but to most of my constituents. There will, of course, be. We've got ourselves into a very difficult place in this country whereby, and my own government previously was partly responsible for this, we're defending the right of people to make excessive profits and for a tiny minority of the population. They're the same people who've had their tax cut, the people earning over $150,000 a year. You know, it's about time. We're not asking for the moon here. We're asking for the country to be run in the interests of the majority of people in this country, the consumers, the people who are in terribly overcrowded housing conditions, the people who come to my surgery every week. And I'm delighted Ed Miliband's spoken up for them.
Anna, you're shaking your head at that. What's wrong with that? I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, you said yourself that a lot of people are being punished by the energy bills. Maybe they're lowest in Europe, but then we've got declining real wages in this country for the last 3 years. What's wrong with helping them?
Well, the problem is it's not just the energy. I mean, you're looking at kind of throwing a whole BAM into the system. We don't know what's going to happen by nationalising it. As actually, I'll go back to one of the points made earlier. The government's own policy is actually the same. It's picking and choosing who they want to support as well. So it's as bad as this policy. But we're looking at what's going to happen if there is a crisis. What if there is a oil crisis or whatnot in the next 2 years? And you're looking at bailing out these massive corporations with taxpayers' money. It's completely unjust, I think, at this stage. And there does need to be something done about energy prices, but this is not the right way forward.
Dawn, what do you think got him here? Because, I mean, it is a departure from the whole sort of New Labour years. You can see, because Lord Mandelson's complaining so bitterly about it, that the Blairites don't like it. What do you think got him here?
I think probably the debate that's been raging sort of from last year and over the summer, you know, in terms of, well, in my mind, in terms of criticising the unions, for instance, and the party having to take a good long look at itself to where it came from and actually who it's helped along the way, because the Labour Party helps the many and not the few. And over the last 3 years, as you've just said, you know, 38 out of the 39 months, people have seen their wages decrease and decline by around £1,500 a year. And you have to say, well, who is this government actually helping? And if this government isn't helping the many, who will help the many? And that's the role of the Labour Party. That's what we're there for. We're there to help the many. And, you know, even you know, the talk around the welfare system and, you know, people lounging on benefits, that kind of language, all of that has to stop. And we have to look at the reality of the situation. And that's what Labour's job is. That's what we're supposed to be there. And I think Labour actually needed this. It needs critical friends. It needed to have an argument with the union so that we can then look at what we actually stand for and be proud of what we stand for. I'm, you know, really proud of the fact that I'm happy to talk about the policies that Ed's talked about. I'm happy to talk about sort of Ed's speech. I'm happy to have that debate on the doorsteps of people of Brent. And the people that suffered the most or have been suffering are the poorest in society. And it's about time we lifted them up a little instead of trying to pull them down.
Fuad, do you think the Tory party's been wrong-footed by this? Because it's got used, as I guess most people have, to a Labour leadership that sort of relentlessly pursues the middle ground. Blair took over the idea of triangulation from Bill Clinton. That's been the policy for ages. You're going to have to recalibrate to fight a different enemy, aren't you?
I don't think so at all. I think we haven't been wrong-footed at all because the policy is a complete shambles. If you want to talk about, you know, bringing good equality to poor people and encouraging people back to work, you have to look at the work that IDS is doing and getting people into work. If you want to actually affect how the poor in society are paying taxes, you say to them that if they earn less than £10,000, you take them out of the tax system altogether. That's what's going to actually put money into people's pockets, not £1 a week that the energy companies gain in profit. It's actual real measures that will make a real difference, not the gimmick policies that Miliband's coming out with.
Andrew, do you think that this is going to go further now? Do you think that now he's on this track that there's going to be a more systematic overhaul of where Labour stands? I mean, many people watching this programme will be glad to hear some of these policies, but they're less happy with some of the things that are being said about immigration, for instance. Hello, Andrew, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. On immigration, again, Ed has said the issues are around exploitation. They're around people being brought in as migrant workers and paid below minimum wage and having a level playing field. And that benefits 50% of the people of my constituency were born outside the UK, but they're British citizens now, and they will benefit as much from Labour's immigration policies as anybody else. But I think on the key issues here, which are economic issues about cost of living, we are seeing Labour saying, you need decent, affordable housing. You need to be able to pay your bills at the end of the month, whether it's your mortgage or it's your energy bills, or whether you simply need access to public services like the NHS that we used to take for granted, which the Tories are now trying to ration and are trying to say will only be available to a privileged few. So I think he's absolutely spoken out at the right time. And I think the Tories are on the back foot here. They've been rumbled here that all their stations about being the party of competence or what have you, really they are the party of an elite. They're the party of 5 or 10% of the population. And for that reason, I don't believe that they will succeed at the next election.
What about I'll come to you in a second, Paul. What do you think about? Let's move on and talk a little bit about the housing question here, because wouldn't Labour actually have to do something even more radical than they're talking about? Because the only times in this country when there's been serious amounts of house building is when there's been government building of public housing. I mean, they started after the First World War. There was supposed to be a private-led housing boom. It collapsed, and it was only when council housing got going in the 30s. Same after the Second World War. And it hasn't happened on a scale that's adequate to deal with the problem since council housing was sold off by Thatcher.
Well, the problem is, I think house building in general, obviously there is a huge housing crisis in the country and there is a lack of council housing and the like. The problem is, I think it comes down to the planning regulations, and that's what I would really, say is the massive issue. And the Conservatives haven't done enough in terms of planning, and it's something that Labour haven't really alluded to as much, but it needs to be looked at seriously, because at the moment we need to get more developers in there building houses, and because council housing in particular is an issue, there is a lack of it. That's why, we've seen the spare room subsidy and the like to get more people in. And this is something that does need to be looked at, because at the moment, you're seeing such huge amounts of land. I think it's 85% of green land in the southeast. That's a huge amount of land that there could be more building and more houses for people, and that's something that does need to be looked at quite seriously.
Yeah, I mean, the housing policy and issue is one thing, but can I just pick on something that Twaid said in regards to the welfare reform and what Ian Duncan Smith and Osborne's talking about? Unlike a lot of politicians, especially in the Tory party, I've had sort of proper jobs, and I used to work in the employment service, and I could tell you that what Osborne was talking about today will not work. 100% it will not work. You cannot have people come into the job centre every day to sign on and look for a job. That will not work. Even if you were to double the number of people who are working in the job centre, it will not work. If there's a disjointed policy, that is a disjointed policy. And they're raising it like it's this flagship policy. It's ridiculous. And then trying to say that, after 3 years, you're going to force people to go and work in jobs that they're going to be paying people. You're going to say to people, we're going to pay this person to do your job, what they're claiming on benefits. It is a wrong policy, and it's more of a punishment. That's what Osborne effectively has said. It's a crazy policy. I just don't even understand why he's made that announcement.
We've seen it work in the 90s quite a lot across the US.
It was a different policy. It was not the policy that Osborne has put forward today.
If you took those points, what they did, looking at national insurance contributions, how much people, if you are long-term unemployed, you want to get back into the workforce.
Of course you do.
And why not have some support from the government for that?
What you do
Let me just bring Andy Slaughter in on this. Andy, I mean, what do you reckon to this stuff? I mean, some people might take the view that the government's been borrowing money from taxpayers and that they're entitled to have it back when they're unemployed, not that in some way they've got to beg for it.
I heard an industrialist say this morning, not a natural Labour supporter, that this was distraction politics. Here you've got the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He used to be criticised for spending all his time promoting the Tory party rather than sorting out the economy. Now he's decided he's going to be punishing the unemployed. Whether you agree or not with the fact that long-term unemployed should put something back in, and that's a moot point. How is that going to get Britain out of recession? How is that going to get Britain working again? This is very crude dog whistle politics. It's basically saying, let's blame the weakest, the most vulnerable people in society in the same way that they're taking benefits from disabled people. I think this really does expose what the modern Tory party is like. You were talking about housing earlier on, and we were talking about, are we going to get house building going again? The Tories aren't interested in house building. They're not interested. Ed Miliband said, let's build at least 200,000 new houses a year. The Tories say, let's inflate house prices to make sure that developers make even more money. That's what their policies are about. I find it quite breathtaking, actually, even after 30 years in politics. We've now got a government that is very clearly simply governing for a tiny, tiny minority at the top of society and using their power and their influence to victimise and punish those people at the bottom.
Fahad, let me just bring you back. What is wrong with the argument that I pay taxes all my life? If I'm unfortunate enough to be unemployed, you've got some of my money and I'd like it back to look after myself when I'm in a difficult place?
Let me first go back to the original question that you asked about housing policy.
No, I'm actually asking you about this policy now. So what is wrong with that argument?
The argument that what?
That I've been paying taxes all my life, that if I'm suddenly become unemployed and I want some of my money back to look after myself in a difficult time, you ought to give it to me if you're the government.
I think it's about the cost, isn't it? It's about manageable, sustainable government. And if we did that, we couldn't afford to do it. I mean, we're struggling at the moment with the benefits bill as it is. And to add to that bill is completely unsustainable. But if I may go back to the housing policy again, when this government came in, there was over 1,000 pages in planning legislation. Nick Bowles and others have stripped that right back to under 50 pages. They've made it easier for buildings that were in non-residential use to be converted into residential use. And the most important thing that the government has done is saying that it's going to allow people to back people that are first-time buyers or poor on low incomes to get a mortgage. And it's a great thing for somebody when they're very young or on a low income to actually being able to buy a house, and they've been excluded from the market, and it's something that this government is addressing, giving them the opportunity to actually get on that housing market.
Do you think they are, Eleanor?
Help to Buy is a scheme that, look, we're in a financial crisis as it is. They cannot go out there and put taxpayers' money at risk in this way. We've seen what happened in the US. This is something I just think will not work. If they really want to help, then they start, as I said, need to do more with the planning system, first of all. And they need to look at, even first-time buyers stamp duty in London is a huge issue. They need to look at stuff like that, simple ways that they can change that, change the way it's structured, make it less punitive, more marginal, like income tax, and make it easier for people then to not have to go from that 250,000 where you go from 3,000 to 9,000. That's what they need to do. Not look at this kind of paying Peter for, this
so
kind of...
Do you think that what's happening here, or what may happen here, is that we'll revisit the very origins of the financial crash?
That's the worry. That's what I would worry about. We're getting that kind of sense of...
That we're paying the mortgage companies to give mortgages to people who can't afford to repay them.
This is the issue, that there are easier ways to help people get on the market. House building and changing the stamp duty regime. They're the things that the government need to be looking at, not bringing in this new Help to Buy scheme, which...
I must say I agree, because you're still talking about 95%, 100% mortgages. So, if the interest rate changes, inflation goes up, people might not be able to afford the mortgage. And so the government's saying that they'll take on the bulk of that risk, but I think it will lead us into difficulties. And I think what Andrew was saying and what Ed is saying is that he's going to put £10 billion into a new infrastructure, into building new houses, and hopefully 1 million homes over 5 years and 400,000 in the first year, which I think is what we need to do. We need to build more affordable housing. And yes, we have to define affordability, what is affordable. So yes, we have to look at that and identify what's actually affordable, but build more affordable housing and more family housing so people can have a mortgage that they can actually afford comfortably. And back to the welfare system, job seekers allowance was basically effectively, if you've been working, you pay your national insurance, you get your job seekers allowance because that's what you're entitled to. And that's what that was there for.
And do you think that there's been, because the other part of the original housing crash was not just that the mortgage companies were lending to people who couldn't afford to pay it, but the banks were borrowing the money from other banks in order to make that loan in the first place. Do you think that the banking system has been overhauled to an extent that at least you might not get the sort of second wing of that crash?
Well, that's an interesting point, but I just think generally the scheme, while we're on it, Help to Buy, I do think that the government are going in the wrong direction with this. And I think that there are, as I said, many easier ways for them to make it easier for first-time buyers to get on the housing market. And this is not the right path for them at the moment.
This will help people who've already got a lot of money already. Well, this will probably help those people because it's houses up to £600,000, I think. And this will probably help those people who already have...
I think they've said, though, I think it is just for first-time buyers. I don't think you can go on to second homes or whatnot, as far as I understand.
Although the relief for people who are buying to let is quite extensive already.
But this, as I said, I do think that there are easier ways. Stamp duty is one thing that they need to look at. It's an erroneous tax that at the moment is hindering so many people I know trying to get on the property market, particularly in London and the southeast. Because you're not going to find a lot of places for 250,000, let's be honest. And once you go over that £1, you're going up $6,000 in tax. And
OK, we're going to have to leave it there because that's all we've got time for in the first half of the programme. But do rejoin us after the break for the second part of Analysis.
Recite, understand and live the Quran with Tayyibun Institute. Tayyibun Institute is UK's leading Islamic educational institute supported by world-renowned scholars and reciters. We have structured part-time and full-time courses in Quran, Tajweed, Arabic language and Islamic studies for children and adults. Registration and new terms starting after Ramadan. For more information, please visit our website at tayyibun.com or contact us on 0207 702 7254.
Making a will is the only way to give long-term protection to your family and assets. Abacus Wills and Trusts specialise in will writing, inheritance tax planning and power of attorney. Whatever your location, a professional legal consultant will visit you in the comfort of your own home